Live from downtown Vancouver at the Vancouver Film School campus, it's time for EP Live. Hey, welcome to EPN. My name is Victor Lucas, and we bring you the latest in everything cool. And you know what's cool is that it's almost E3 time, and all the big announcements are going to be heading our way very, very soon. We've got some leaks that we're going to get into today. Sam, I know him as Sam Red from Twitter. Sam Machkovech, I think that's how you say his last name. Sam's going to kill me. He's our guest today from Ars Technica. He is going to be on after the rundown, and we're going to get into it, talking about the games we know about, the games that have been leaked, the games that we think are coming, and all kinds of E3 goodness. We've got a great show for you. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you're having an awesome Friday. It's a beautiful start to a weekend here in Vancouver, and I thank everybody for coming into the space today. Thank you for being a part of this day, coming in from the heat and talking video games with me. This is going to be a lot of fun. Let's get started with our rundown, and it's going out to a brand new member, Easy054098. This is your rundown. You can turn off the bat signal because Gotham City has found its new Batman. Multiple outlets report that Warner Brothers and DC have officially inked a deal with Twilight star Robert Pattinson to play the new Batman. No public announcements have been made, but Variety, Deadline, and The Hollywood Reporter all claim that it's a done deal, and Pattinson will be donning the cape and cowl. Rumors surfaced recently that he was the front runner for the job, although at the time the studio was still trying to decide between him and another actor, Nicholas Hoult, so it looks like Pattinson won the battle. The new Batman movie is slated to begin pre-production this summer, and I think what Warner Brothers did, they knew that this was going to cause a lot of controversy, and we were going to get a lot of people like myself, full confession, get up in arms on Twitter and say, "What the hell, man? What? He was like the vampire from Teen Beat. What the hell? That's not Batman." So we all did that, and we did a week of complaining and whining, but we knew that he was probably going to be Batman. And then they maybe probably have paid Nicholas Hoult some money to say, "You might be Batman." He might be in the movie as something else. They probably did something there. But basically, Warner Brothers gave us a week to get over it, and now it's announced and it's official, and I think we're all over it. And it's like, okay, let's see what you can do, pretty boy. Maybe he's going to be good. I'm sure he's training his ass off right now to get in shape and to look badass and tough. I know the guy's a good actor, and I know you're all flaming me right now with all kinds of comments and cussing me out because the internet has no barriers and you just say whatever the hell comes into your mind. I know that, but it's more than just that I wanted. I wanted there to be kind of a clean slate, no expectations, no extra pressure on that actor. That's just me selfishly. Just wanted a surprise, Batman a la Christopher Reeve as Superman, or Robert Downey. Well, Robert Downey Jr. had a lot of baggage, but he was perfect for Tony Stark, wasn't he? Anyways, I am excited to see what Matt Reeves has got up his sleeve with a much younger and presumably more agile, more detective-oriented Batman. I'm super psyched to see what's going on there. Ben Affleck was a good choice physically for a certain type of Batman, but I think it was undermined by some scripts that didn't really honor the source material in as many fruitful ways as trying to be as diplomatic as possible. But I didn't appreciate all the choices that Zack Snyder had with his use of Ben Affleck as our Batman for the last few years. And I don't think, honestly, Ben Affleck did either. But let's see how this new Batman works out. Hopefully it is the most acrobatic and intelligent Batman we've ever seen on screen. That would be awesome. Now, and speaking of DC movies, it looks like the films are getting more and more help from the comics. The big screen adaptation of the iconic DC franchise New Gods has brought on a new screenwriter, Tom King, who's written countless comic books for both DC and Marvel. He'll work closely with the film's director, Ava DuVernay, to craft the... Did I get her name right? Close, right? Okay. To craft the story, and he's already familiar with the New Gods characters, having written an entire comic series featuring New Gods hero, Mr. Miracle. Tom King's involvement could signal a shift for the DC movies. The films were initially reluctant to utilize DC Comics veterans, but more recently, Aquaman was co-written by Jeff Johns, and the upcoming Wonder Woman 1984 is produced by Jim Lee. New Gods is expected to hit theaters in 2021. Yeah, Warner Brothers has been notoriously siloed off as a company for many, many years, and it always struck me as a bit odd. I mean, there was a bit of a kind of a throwaway dismissiveness with the idea of crafting a Superman the movie back in the 70s. And it wasn't until Richard Donner took a look at the original script and said, no, we got to do a much better job here. And he kicked the script to Mario Puzo, who had come off of The Godfather. And they tooled a Superman film, a superhero film for the ages. But Warner Brothers never really cared all that much. And Batman was kind of in the same boat. It became a successful monetary property for them, but they've always looked at them as sort of, I think, like these juvenile for the fans and super genre, super niche kind of properties that they would make some money off of, but they weren't the prestige. But what's always been fascinating for me is that no matter what era of Warner Brothers movies that you look at since the 1970s, and I've seen tons of home video advertisements and lots of pre-rolls on it, VHS tapes and then DVDs talking about the Warner Brothers library, they would always kick to Superman and then later on to Batman. So, even though outwardly they weren't always making the best choices with these characters, I think as an organization, these characters were incredibly important to them financially. Now they're starting to understand that fans loving these properties means lots of money and lots of success, and people that really intimately know these characters and these properties having their hands all over them, figuratively speaking, is going to turn into some really, really good work for us. So, and clearly they've got the roadmap for all that with the fine work that Kevin Feige and his team has been doing with the Marvel MCU. So hopefully we're going in that direction. James Gunn's on Suicide Squad. Hopefully things are going to start to get awesome with DC movies. All right, Nintendo has quietly brought out another one of their biggest franchises to VR. A new update for Super Smash Bros. Ultimate was released this morning, making the game playable with the new Nintendo Labo VR headset. It doesn't work with the entire game. You'll only be able to use it when playing offline, and even then in just limited and timed battles. But the good news is that you'll get a new perspective that lets you see more of the stage. It's available now as a free update to Smash, although you'll obviously need to buy the Labo VR headset in order to get in. Nintendo has already released similar VR modes for other big Switch games like Super Mario Odyssey and Breath of the Wild. I have not yet tried those out on the Labo VR. We've done just the headset building. My daughter and I, we just put together basically they look like Viewmaster, like a headpiece there where you can stick the Switch in, and you do get some pretty cool, VR mini games or tech demos, but we haven't done any actual gameplay with the VR headset, and we haven't done any more building of any of the Labo VR kit either. Mostly because I've been traveling, and then when I've been home, my daughter her schedule's full with all kinds of stuff. So I'm really trying to do the Labo VR experience with a 7-year-old to get her perspective, because if she digs it and sees it as the future of video games, I want to hear that, right? So I don't just want to put it together and compare it to the Oculus Quest. I wanted to sort of see if this is really an engaging and fun experience for my kid. So stay tuned. I will have some thoughts on the whole Labo VR experience. Now, we're never going to get another movie with all 4 original Ghostbusters, but here's the next best thing. A remastered version of the 2009 Ghostbusters video game is on the way. It's being made by Saber Interactive, the same studio behind the remastered editions of Halo, and like the original, will feature all 4 of the classic Ghostbusters actors doing, what else? Good old-fashioned ghostbusting. The remastered version lands this summer. It's no coincidence that this is coming out just in time for the new Ghostbusters movie. That's billed as a direct sequel to the first 2 films, albeit focusing on a new group of characters. It hits theaters next year. I also think this is the 35th anniversary or something of Ghostbusters. It's a big deal this year that Ghostbusters is front and center and it's out there. I know Greg Miller and his team. Greg Miller made all of the kind of funny guys buy Ghostbusters outfits. He's hardcore, but I know that they're super happy for it. I loved this game when it came out on the Xbox 360. I thought it was a really great homage to the classic Ghostbusters franchise, and it had all the actors in it, and it was just fun. It was a really well-made game, so hopefully Saber doesn't drop the ball, and we get an awesome, modern-day coat of paint on a a very solid Ghostbusters game. These licensed games, I know we poo-poo them all the time in our business, but sometimes they are incredibly important, as I am discovering, and we'll talk about when we get into the Mega SG discussion a little bit later in the show. But right now, it's time for this day in Everything Cool. Welcome to This Day and Everything Cool for May 31st. All your base are belong to us. On this day in 1991, Sega released the side-scrolling space combat game Zero Wing on the Sega Mega Drive, following its release in arcades a few years earlier. The Mega Drive version wasn't a big success, but about 10 years later, it did manage to make a name for itself. In the year 2000, a music video lampooning the game's poor Japanese to English translation appeared on the internet, featuring the now infamous line, "All your base are belong to us," which appears in the opening of the game.
All your base are belong to us.
The video and its catchy tune became a huge viral hit and was one of the first big internet memes in the very early years of online video. The popularity of the video is especially impressive because it predates most social media platforms, including MySpace, Facebook, and Twitter. Despite the newfound publicity surrounding Zero Wing thanks to the popularity of the video, Sega has never used the opportunity to give the game an official re-release or a more accurate translation. Okay. All right, we are back, and every day is a very cool day and lots of fun things in tech, and especially today we're going to talk about all kinds of exciting announcements and not yet announcements surrounding E3 with Sam. How do you say your last name, Sam?
Machkovech.
Machkovech. I didn't want to butcher it. I'm sorry. I butchered it in your intro there.
It's all right. I got you to say sorry, so that works for me.
You got me to say sorry. Sam lives and works out of the Seattle area for a fantastic website called Ars Technica. How long have you been there?
I've been there for 5 years, writing a lot about games, VR, film. Basically, Victor will write about something or talk about it, and then I'll do a slightly less good job. That's basically what I've been doing over there.
See,
at
this is why Sam's on the show so often, and will be many, many more times. No, this is very sweet of you. But that's pretty cool because you know the media landscape is very volatile, and to have that level of support for that length of time these days is kind of rare, isn't it?
I have found a way to get paid to talk about video games for 23 years now, Victor. So you know, I understand that sentiment and then some. We could go on and on about that, but I feel like you and I have like 750 video games to talk about. Isn't that what we got going on here?
We have a massive, massive list. I think the first thing that we have to talk about, because we were under embargo and we actually were talking about having you on earlier, but we had to shift the date. Now we can talk about Call of Duty. I haven't really talked to you since we were pummeled by all of its beauty and grotesqueries when we sat down for the demo.
Oh, my goodness.
What are your thoughts on this game?
It was a very intense presentation. What's really interesting is Victor and I, along with a big panel of pre-E3 press, we all were invited to Infinity Ward Studios in California in the Los Angeles area.
Which was great.
Yeah, it was really cool, and we sat in their giant presentation theater room, and we got to see 2 real-time gameplay sequences, 2 full missions from pretty early in the game. And before this, it was sort of an interesting thing. And over at Vice, Austin Walker has a really great article, and I recommend everyone go look at it, because I think he did a really good job of talking about how this Call of Duty Modern Warfare can't quite make up its mind between being bad and being badass, or in terms of how it portrays war. Because we got to hear a lot of long speeches, and you don't see this in the YouTube reveal that came out yesterday about taking war seriously, the phrase boots on the ground, the morally gray areas of war. You get that sort of really gritty sounding presentation or sound of these missions, but then we also got, a 20-minute speech about graphics pipelines and how about the gun is the character. They think of the gun as a character. I'm like, Super Mario, big gun, same thing. It's in a really strange territory, Modern Warfare, because it's trying to juggle some exciting gameplay and beautiful tech with some rip from the headlines kind of material.
It's going to rub people the wrong way. I think it already has in some ways, for sure.
We can talk about the single player, which we did not get to play. But it was really intense because it was 2 missions that were take characters. I mean, for people who don't know, this is not a remake of Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare. They're calling it Call of Duty Modern Warfare. That had leaked about a week earlier, and people kind of lost their minds going, ugh, what a terrible name. And the reason they did it was because they said, well, we did a lot with the Modern Warfare timeline. We made 3 games. There were nukes that went off. There were all kinds of crazy occurrences. We like those characters, but we need to reset the timeline in order to bring them back. And so they're kind of starting from scratch with Captain Price, the cigar chomper, who's really familiar. That was the only character we saw. And there were 2 missions, one where you're following Tier 1 operatives in the UK who are stealth crawling through an apartment complex, a townhouse, with night vision goggles on.
Very much like a Rainbow Six mission.
And you see a tiny bit of that in the trailer, and the technology behind the light reflections is unbelievable. Everything about how the light sources bounce off. We heard a long speech about how they're really rendering the heck out of that. And I'm like, yeah, that was incredible. But also, we see plainclothes civilians die in really gruesome ways. Imagine a really finely animated soldier's death in a video game. You've seen this. It's kind of striking. It's kind of terrifying, but maybe it's an alien or an enemy or an abstraction. This looked like real people who we later find out are terrorists or trying to kill you, slumping over. The amount of technology that goes into you feeling terrible about this is pretty intense. And
it's crazy, right? Because I mean, clearly this is fiction, and clearly this is playing up with, our concerns about real-life events and the atrocities of war that are occurring today. But it also is entertainment, and we're also supposed to have a very good time. So it's a very weird balancing act that's happening in your brain. But honestly, I kind of applaud that they're trying, Like, this is a business that is kind of always messy because it's always trying new things. And I applaud that they're doing that with this multi-billion-dollar franchise.
Well, not only that, this is them coming back to the campaign, which they skipped last year for Black Ops 4. They said, oh, we're just doing multiplayer. So for them to come back to the campaign and say, oh, we're swinging. No Russian, which was the really controversial thing from years ago, we're going way past that. Because the second mission, which I haven't even talked about, you're starring as a 7-year-old girl in an unnamed kind of Middle Eastern European country. There's poppy fields, seems like Afghanistan, and it revolves around you at this very diminutive height, having to sneak around, stabbing people with screwdrivers, watching family members die.
Yeah.
It's gruesome. It's brutal. It is weird, and people
heavy.
are going to be talking about it. And so that's only a little bit. We saw essentially linear levels.
Well,
it wasn't.
What hit me. My daughter is 7, so I was totally uncomfortable to watch all of that. But what hit me was what the character saw. It wasn't the actions that she had to do for her survival. It was civilians, dying because of gas attacks and things like that are happening. But I mean, if they're going to try to create something that is, tactile and feels like somewhat a semblance of reality, they have to go dark like this.
And they made a big stink about we're not the superhero Call of Duty. They wanted to make it very clear that they are not Black Ops. It almost felt like they were kind of taking pot shots at the Black Ops side of things, to be like, we're boots on the ground. I think they used that phrase 27 times. I'm kidding, but it was a lot. But the trailer that came out was very wow, oh my goodness, high technology and all that. And what we all saw and wrote about at length was a lot more, ooh boy. And there's a lot more of the game to be shown. I don't know how much more they're going to reveal at E3. I imagine at least something. But all in all, the technology pipeline's incredible. They want war to look really visceral. They're doing that. They actually hinted at a whole new engine do-over. They have a whole team in Poland, and one of their representatives came out and said, we're doing 5 times as much geometry while keeping 60 frames a second.
Yeah,
that's impressive.
Clearly prepping for the next generation of machines, and I think that this will probably be one of those cross-gen titles as well.
Oh, and they're doing crossplay. That's the other thing. PC, Xbox, PlayStation, they're all going to be able to play this Call of Duty together, just this generation, let alone next gen.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive. And I feel like they're emphasizing Modern Warfare because the possibility is that they might actually split Modern Warfare and Call of Duty into different brands. That was the thought that came up, is that they might want to emphasize Modern Warfare as the new brand. Let's talk about some of the other games that we know about. Like, I don't know Basically, because we're under tons of embargoes, so
We are very important people. It's true. We just covered in secrecy. Yes.
And some of these we have played, and some of them we haven't. But let me just thoughts on Oddworld's Soulstorm.
I was at GDC, and there was a Unity presentation that looked like it was pre-rendered. And the thing about Oddworld, you and I are pretty old men in terms of playing the original on PS1 and being blown away. Yes, I mean, we're ancient. I don't even want to talk to you about certain exams I've gone to the doctor about. But Andy
Mack called us old men today too, so I don't know if people are trying to make a statement or something.
But they went to that Unity thing at GDC and said, we're doing this real time. We are going to great lengths to really push a lot of characters and a lot of effects. And I don't know exactly what's to come, but I think they really want to push the Unity engine and take the things that we remember from the PlayStation 1 era and make it explode. When you saw old pre-rendered games and thought, oh my God, what if that was all completely interactive in real time? I think that's where they're going to go, and I hope that they go out of the park with something like that, because
that's awesome.
Yeah, that's my.
Well, it's a cool fit for Unity as well, right? There's some prestige around bringing that brand back. Great mug, by the way. I got to get one of those. Oh, yeah. The Outer Worlds, we know that this is coming from Obsidian. And this one, again, we know a little more about, but I don't know. How much can we talk about the Outer Worlds?
It's a video game that exists. I cannot wait to see what they have to show for the Outer Worlds, because we've all seen they had I want to say that was at the Game Awards in December, where they had that reveal, and you look at it and you go, I was a guy who wanted more from Fallout 4. I wanted the ideas of that to be presented in a more lush engine with more interesting characters, more diversity. And
Blake's nodding. Blake's agreeing with you.
And there are people who can agree or disagree, but I think Obsidian is set in a whole new franchise. If they just rip off Fallout and then go one bigger with every single idea they have in a completely new IP in terms of the choices you can make, the skill trees you can go into, I believe the sky is the limit for that. And I really want to see what they have to show off, because I have gathered that they want to show sort of actual gameplay from the middle of the game. That's what I think they're leaning towards, but they have not gone on the record necessarily.
Right.
But that's what I'm hoping for, and I am very optimistic is how much I can say.
Obsidian is a pretty impressive developer. Now they're Microsoft owned, so it's this whole game. The idea of it is a bit weird to me, because I don't know if it's a Microsoft game now. But they have delivered so many cool titles over the years. Maybe some of them a little bit beyond their reach, maybe a little too ambitious, but such fantastic designers and writers and developers within that team over there. I'm super excited about the Outer Worlds. I think this might be one of the better games of the year.
That was one of the trailers that they showed last year, and I'm like, the sky's the limit in terms of my imagination, because that art design and that, I want to have faith in it. So we will see.
Do you think Cyberpunk 2077 is coming out this year?
No, I think that it could come out. They could do I want to say the original Doom came out on December 31st in its release year, just to make that year, but it will slip. I am not familiar with what's going on over there at CD Projekt Red. I do know that something will be at E3 with that game, and I was in the theater when they were showing it off last year. And this year, I think, is really going to be answering the question of how much of this is a game. What happens when you get the controller in your hand and prove out? I think that's the milestone they have to hit.
Did you book your appointment with them, or have you got a demo?
I've booked 7 appointments just in case. I just want to make sure those things fill up real fast. But
yes.
I don't know if they're going to give me a controller or a mouse and keyboard. I don't know what's going to happen. But I do think that this E3 is theirs if they can get people to grab a controller and tell different stories, because that's what that original presentation made us all believe was, wow, you really have a lot of directions to go, whether you're killing things, sneaking around, going through complete just conversation-driven stuff with conversation trees. It's one of those games that made us all go, okay, I've been waiting for this. I want to believe that it's this big. Outer Worlds to me seems a little less ambitious and a little more like, yeah, it's going to happen. Cyberpunk, I still have question marks.
Yeah, Cyberpunk is almost, answering the promise of a lot of the ideas that Deus Ex proposed, an incredibly stylish, very polished presentation kind of style as well.
Those big, bustling cities. I mean, I could just imagine an E3 demo where you go into that hub town and just have conversations with people for 2 hours and then get shooed away by the next attendee and go, no!
What do you think that EA is going to turn their Star Wars ship around with Jedi Fallen Order?
Respawn did the impossible by putting out Apex Legends and having it not suck. I think
Yeah.
we all went into that thinking this is going to be a nightmare. You can say what you want about its support over the past few months since it launched. It's still a good game. It's still them saying we can do it. So that I think was really important for both Respawn and EA to say we can still make a decent game and have limits. We know how much we can and can't do. So if that is the case and they can double that down with Jedi Fallen Order, great. So I don't know, though, because they've bombed through so much Star Wars stuff. They've had so many different people on the leadership side of EA. From what I've read of Jason Schreier over Kotaku, his reporting is incredible.
Yeah, yes.
And the message that seems to come through again and again is management and leadership that just doesn't know what to do with a licensed property, as opposed to...
Destiny came in and really kind of shook up the business, right? Like, it really kind of pointed a direction for a lot of people that were trying to figure out how to navigate through these super expensive games, and they looked over at what Bungie and Activision had done and said, whoa, that's working. Let's try to just follow that. But as we're learning, and everybody at BioWare is learning, it's really hard to kind of find people at Bungie are learning on Destiny 2 still, like this is a really difficult path.
We're going to get to Microsoft in a second, but Microsoft has finally been hitting the reset button on the leading, not following. That's why they've kind of gone dark. That's why E3 for them stunk last year, because they said, we got to really get out of the Don Matrick Connect on Xbox One era. We got to start from scratch.
Right.
And I think EA, I don't know if this is the year that they say we're resetting and we're going to lead instead of following. They seem really stuck on following trends. I mean, goodness, Apex Legends as a battle royale, whoever made that decision, whether it was Respawn or otherwise, that felt more like following than leading. So that's going to be the cloud over them until they really put out a show of force.
Yeah, and sometimes that works. We see Apple kind of take the following but finessing kind of path, and it works for that company. And I think you can point to certain eras in Electronic Arts history and see that it worked for them as well. But I think what's true about EA is that they have an unbelievable collection of intellectual properties that they own, and they have a lot of cash in the bank to be able to build us some world-class stuff.
I'm still waiting for FIFA Battle Royale. That's what we need. 100 soccer players, one ball. Let's do it.
Please don't suggest that. We're probably going to get that in the EA non-press conference. Okay, let's talk a little bit about Nintendo here, and then we'll get into Microsoft. We know that they're not going to have a Switch. That's what they've said, anyways. We already know that there's Animal Crossing coming. We know that the Pokemon game, Sword and Shield, and there's the other derivatives of Pokemon are coming because of Nintendo Directs. We know that Super Mario Maker 2 is going to be out very soon. We know that The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening, that's one of the games that I'm most excited about for 2019. Can they surprise us, and what do you think they will surprise us with? They've kind of showed us a lot already for this year.
I will say one thing I've noticed for the past few years of Nintendo at E3, they'll have maybe a surprise, but they're really about having the show floor. They want that show floor to be giant lines for the games that they know that people want. Like Smash Brothers was not a surprise last year, lines out the wazoo. Mario Odyssey, that had lines out of the wazoo when that was being teased. They don't need to surprise us at E3. They want that photo op of everyone saying, I love Nintendo. And they're going to get that with Animal Crossing. They're going to get that with Pokemon Sword and Shield. I still think they have an opportunity to surprise with some sort of niche-y thing that's going to do more for E3 reactions than it's going to do for stockholder reactions. Because they want to surprise with like smartphone success. That seems to be the thing that drives them. I've just been testing Mario Kart Tour beta. I don't know if they're going to talk about that at all at E3 because that's such a big deal for Japanese publishers. So there could be, and one more thing. I don't know if it's going to be Metroid Prime 4. I don't know exactly what I do think we're going to get a Smash Brothers DLC reveal. I feel like it's going to be that level of thing because they're going to have a Smash Brothers tournament and other sort of esports stuff. And, Mario Maker 2 won't be out yet, so they're still going to have kiosks and lines for that. People are going to be doing local multiplayer. There's going to be just lines of people waiting to do 4-player Mario Maker stuff. That's going to be its own trip. So that's honestly, sort of what I anticipate.
Yeah, I mean, you've got Mario Maker, you've got Animal Crossing, you've got a new Fire Emblem, you've got a new Pokemon game, and we've got the Zelda remake. That's 5 big games that anybody would love to have, right? And Nintendo's got them all locked up.
And they're really good at doing the slow drip of every 90 days a Nintendo Direct that blows the internet up, takes every
Yeah.
Twitter hashtag.
Yep.
They know when to drop that stuff. And Microsoft and Sony are playing catch up with their own fake Nintendo Direct versions, and
Right.
Nintendo's still steamrolling, showing us how it's done.
I guess we get to see Doug Bowser perform too, right? This is his first
Bowser
big
Unleashed.
reveal. Bowser Unleashed.
Oh, I can't. I hope he has a stupid catchphrase. 'Cause,
Okay, well, Bethesda had a remarkable year last year. Some good, some very bad. I think the signs might have been there for Fallout 76 with the game not being able to be played at E3 last year. That was odd. And it wasn't playable at Gamescom.
That was not odd to me. That was entirely expected because it just looked like GAAS, games as a scam, sorry, games as a service. And I'm cutting ahead of you because they set 2 games up at the press conference last year that looked, playable and real, and the hope is that we're going to see more of those this year. Doom Eternal and Wolfenstein Youngblood. With Doom Eternal, that's more of the same maybe, or maybe some refinements and some crazy stuff. I don't know what I can say about that other than
that's one that we could say some things, but we can't.
I'm very optimistic in general because Doom 2016 got a lot right and surprised everybody.
Oh, that was an incredible game, yeah.
That means they can move full steam ahead with that and build on that. Like, even if it was just played like an expansion pack, I would probably be satisfied. But I'm curious what more they can bring to the table. And then on the other hand, there's Wolfenstein Youngblood. That does look to me more like an expansion pack than a full game. I don't know what they're going to have with that. I think they've promised... I don't remember exactly what they've said publicly about it, but I'm curious to see it. But I'm not as excited about that. But people have loved that game, that engine. Does great stuff with id Tech 5, looks great on console and computer. So I imagine whatever they show of that will be playable and will be very high-tech, visceral, bloody fun.
Well, you know what I always love about publishers giving developers 3 kicks at something is that by that 3rd time, they get into some pretty revolutionary stuff. We've seen that over and over again with Burnout, with Grand Theft Auto, and I think it's awesome that Bethesda has given Machine Games this much support to kind of shake up that franchise. I'm super psyched to see what they do with Youngblood. I've been a fan. I've liked those previous
But on the
games.
other hand, I don't know that we're going to see... I don't know what they're going to do with Elder Scrolls 6. I think last year they showed like a JPEG that Elder Scrolls 6 exists.
A title, yeah.
And their other one, Starfield, is that the name? Am I blanking on that name?
Yeah.
Maybe they're going to show like a really flashy pre-rendered something that is not real gameplay, which is going to be ZZZ for me. If so, but if they've got, or if Doom and Wolfenstein are on the plate, then we'll see what kind of teases. I do expect them to have a very long presentation about Elder Scrolls Online and Elder Scrolls Blades and Elder Scrolls Card something, whatever mobile thing that makes me fall asleep. I'm sure they're going to devote too much time to that.
Do you think Starfield will sort of follow the vein of the Elder Scrolls games and the Fallout games that Bethesda has been putting out there, or do you think it will be a totally different type of experience?
I want to be a fly on the wall at Bethesda at that course, the Todd Howard room, because I think they know that they want to be the gamer reputation studio. I want to see what they say about 76 at the presentation. I want to see what they say about a lot of criticism about that. There are people who like that game, who've gone in and seen it get support. I think it's better supported than Anthem, which is not saying much, but they're trying.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, but they have to take away from that and respond. And so that, I think, is the thing that we can't predict. Are they going to say something? Are they going to show something that specifically says, hey, 76 haters, here's the other thing. We swear we got your back.
They did that a little bit with Elder Scrolls Online, and the one thing that I love about the way that Pete Hines kind of runs the ship over there is that he legitimately plays. He's been with the company for 20-something years at this point.
I think that's Todd Howard coming to get you right now.
Yeah, that's the Bethesda police. No, but he, he's a passionate guy that really knows how to be straight up with the messaging, and I feel like we're probably going to get something. A little mea culpa, I think, about the problems that Fallout 76, and that's exactly what they need to do. And frankly, that's what EA didn't do with Star Wars Battlefront, and I think we need to hear something about Anthem as well from the brass at EA, not just sort of push out one of the developers. I think they got to kind of take some responsibility for some of these shortfalls.
I think we should move on to more optimistic territory.
Yes.
I have nothing else nice to say about those.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Let's talk about Xbox. Speaking about optimism, because I think last year was a little bit underwhelming, but we did get the news.
Battletoads!
Yeah, they're buying so many Battletoads. They're buying so many studios. They've got to have some exciting announcements this year.
You know, Gears 5 is going to be a big show. They're going to do a lot to push that.
Yep.
I think the Coalition is still down the block from you guys there in BC.
We had Rod in here as a guest. He was fantastic.
You know, maybe we're going to see something from Gears Tactics. I've heard tiny rumbles that things are a little shaky on that one compared to Gears 5, but that's supposedly happening still. But I think Gears 5 has a chance to be everything that Gears 4 kind of aspired to.
Yep.
Completely owned and maintained by a studio that's gotten its legs under it. So that is I'm really hopeful, and I do believe that's going to be the one we see the most of, just because we already know about it, because it's coming soon, as opposed to Halo Infinite, which I think we're just going to get some vague stuff. We might get a speech with like a couple of still images. We might get
That's a launch game for the next machine, I think, right?
They're definitely going to say something, because they said something last year. That doesn't mean it's going to be much, but there's also just the question of, well, what do we have? Like, I have a tab open in my other browser that is about all of the different pieces of the puzzle. We've got, you know, what's Forza going to do? Are we going to see? They said that they were taking the year off from doing the usual Forza Motorsport versus Forza Horizon. They'd be doing every other year for each of those. They said specifically they're taking time off, and there may be some DLC for Forza Horizon. That's been the buzz, that it's going to, the leak is hinting at, if you liked the Hot Wheels expansion for the last Horizon, you're going to love whatever thing is coming from this one. So it sounds like it'll be wackadoodle. You know, we got In Exile, we got Mojang, we've got Rare, we've got Obsidian, we've got Ninja Theory, Ori, the next Ori platformer. It's still not out. We played it last year and it felt really great. Ninja Theory is a studio I really like. Are they going to do something with Age of Empires? Are we going to see something from the guys who made We Happy Few? I shouted Battletoads. If you go back and listen to last year's E3 presentation, you can hear me scream right at the moment that the Battletoads logo appears, because I was the one guy in the room who gave a crap. But I do wonder if that is going to be that exact $20 fun, wacky thing that Microsoft needs so badly. Just you know, a modest, fun, wacky callback, because
Cuphead kind of served that.
And it's
to a
time
degree.
for another one of those, in my opinion.
It's time for more there. And honestly, I think we're probably going to hear some big announcements about their partnerships with companies like Nintendo and maybe more.
Could be. They want to run the cloud for everybody. There's, oh my goodness, I'm blanking on one of the things. There's just
Fable.
Mojang has, they teased an adventure game last year,
right?
A 4-player dungeon crawler. This might be a good time for them to let us know if/when we might expect that. And also, we know that we're going to learn more about Xbox Game Pass for PC. We already know that they want their games on Steam. They want their x86 style software, meaning not bundled with that Windows 10 crap. Like, they're taking that seriously. We got that as like a small press release, but I think that's a big deal, especially in an age when Epic Game Store gets everybody to make some sort of contorted look on their face. Like, it's a really good time for Microsoft to say, hey, man, we want to make sure you've got places to buy stuff with as little extra crap attached to it as possible. So smart move on their part. We'll have to see what they have to say about maybe bundling Xbox Live Gold and Game Pass and, I don't know, T-shirts, whatever the heck they might bundle and just send to your house.
Yeah. No, I think, you know, everything that you've said there makes a lot of sense, but it's not like the shocking reveal. What do you think Xbox drops that's going to shock everybody? New Crimson Skies, new Mech Assault, new Fable?
I don't have any good. Everybody's shut the heck up. All of my Seattle area sources at Microsoft are keeping their lips pretty tight, which I think is a good indicator that we're going to get something wackadoodle. I don't think it's going to be a Japanese studio, because historically they have not leaned on those for their big and one more thing. But I do think we'll get something in the middle that says, hey, we got some really cool stuff that'll sell another 87 Xboxes in Japan. But no, I do think it's going to be some sort of big blast from the past or fusion or collaboration that's going to get everyone going. There will be something. They're good.
I mean, I want new Fable, I want new Crimson Skies, and I want new Mech Assault. So if they touch any of those,
they're all in one game, and it's a battle royale. Sorry.
Yeah, no more battle royales. I also would, like Jeff Keighley was kind of joking about this, but we're going to see Halo on PlayStation. We were during the E3 Critics Week. I'm kind of waiting for. I mean, that would totally undermine people saying, "Okay, let's buy the new Xbox," but. I'm kind of waiting for Microsoft to say, you know what, you can play our stuff anywhere you want to.
One thing that's going to help Microsoft a lot, because we know Sony's not going to be there, but there's also the fact that Microsoft is going to tell everyone, you don't have to wait a year to buy the next Xbox.
Right.
The leaks have already come out saying they want everything for Xbox Scarlet, or whatever it'll actually be called. That's just the code name that's been around.
Yep.
They want everything for that at launch next year to be ready for Xbox One X, Xbox One S, Windows 10. They really want this whole Game Pass ecosystem of, hey, however you want to get our games and however you want to play them is going to work. That's Satya Nadella and Phil Spencer really resetting the clock a few years ago, and that's really going to come to fruition. So this doesn't have to be a lame duck year for Microsoft, and that's great news for them.
And it's a software one for them as well, which is really exciting because it's been all about the hardware and all about the Kinect and all the stuff that they were trying to do. This time they've spent their money on all these teams. We get to see some stuff. VR Grid says, I predict that Crimson Skies is going to be at every E3. And I probably have been doing that since the original game came out. I got a question from Nintendo Boy 17, which I think is a terrific one based on a mighty big absence, although we saw Death Stranding, I think, take a little bit of the wind out of the sails of E3. But Nintendo Boy says, do you think it's do you have concerns about E3 as an event now that Sony has dropped out?
I was just going to say, the reason I think that this is going to be the most interesting E3 yet is because everybody is clamoring right now to take up that space in the vacuum. Now, as an attendee, if you're one of the people who pays to go to E3, number one, you're an idiot. But number two, you used to rely on Sony's booth because they had so many third-party developers with kiosks and games you could play with short lines. So that is toast. But I do think there are a couple of publishers that are poised to make some impact. One of them, I can't say at all because I think that would give away something from Judges Week that totally surprised me. And I bet you know what I'm hinting at. But number two is I think Square Enix absolutely has the chance. They have their own press conference in the Sony slot.
Right.
They have a huge slate of Eastern and Western games. Final Fantasy VII, what are we going to see? Don't know. Collection of Mana, that just got trademarked today in the EU. And so that could be a thing on the other end of the JRPG spectrum. Whatever they have in terms of the Avengers game as a service / multiplayer thing.
I'm so freaking psyched for that, man. I love Crystal Dynamics. I hope they just kill it with this game.
And, maybe there's something Deus Ex here for the end of this generation of consoles. There's just a lot that Square Enix has its fingers in, and I think they're poised. Maybe it won't be great, but I think they're going to make that big splash and try and fill in that floor space, get the photo ops, and be there and be like, we're doing this while E3 still exists.
Yeah. Sam, what are you most excited about for this year's E3? What can't you wait for?
Victor, seeing you. That's
no.
I'm really interested in surprises. I want to see what Sony trots out in the days leading up, because they definitely don't want to be forgotten.
Do you think Sony's going to do that? They're going to drop some more big hints before E3? That's such 100%. A pissy thing to do.
Yeah, why not? Everybody's doing it.
I guess so. It's like the war of videos now. Devolver's going to do a stupid YouTube-only conference, and we're not going to be mad at them for doing it. So I do think that they have an opportunity, while all eyes are on Western gaming news, to get in there, butt in with a headline, and make sure that they are not lost, because they're the leading console platform. Gamers are going to expect some information. Death Stranding, that was a great news drop, perfectly timed. I imagine The Last of Us Part 2 is going to get another one. And that we as press won't have to stand in a weird converted church to see it this year. But it really is about, I really do want Microsoft, with all of these acquisitions, with a really quiet E3. I mean, Crackdown 3 was a big focus for them last year at E3. I know.
Which kind of says
how,
and that was so crappy for them.
I
know. This year, the whole slate's been cleared, and they can bust out surprises. So I think that's high on my surprise list. And then other
That's
than
all
that,
I want too, Sam. I want to be surprised. Like we've just listed off a million games here. A lot of them are going to be awesome. We know that. We can predict that, and I think accurately predict that. But I want to be shocked. I want to be surprised. The game that I keep thinking about is Splatoon. When Nintendo dropped that, I called it wrong. I looked at it and I thought, oh my God, it's a kid's shooter. I'm never going to like this thing. And then it became an obsession. It just became so much fun, and I love that out of nowhere Nintendo had created a whole new industry for themselves with this franchise.
And let's not forget, there's two other players this year who I believe are going to do their best to make headlines: Apple and Google.
Right.
They each now have stakes. Apple's got its subscription gaming service for iOS and tvOS, but we don't know much, and I don't see them being
Apple
shy.
Arcade. Yeah.
Because they need to be at E3 and get publishers interested and get developers interested. And then Stadia really wants to get in there and make a splash, and they have allied with Ubisoft. So maybe we'll see Ubisoft and Google come out and swinging with like, hey, guess what? We have a single-player giant adventure. It's going to be on Stadia. It's going to look best on Stadia.
Yep.
And it's single-player subscription, which means it can't be pirated, and we as publishers love that. You can't like buy and sell it. You have to get that could be quite a thing with Google allying with somebody, with Google saying, hey, we just spent all of our money on this giant surprise.
It's a lot of choice, right? And then there's in television with the Amico, there's going to be a little bit of murmurs about that, all that stuff as well. I'm curious to see what that's all about this year.
What, hasn't Tommy opened up his trench coat to you and shown you all that stuff yet?
I've seen prototype stuff, but I haven't seen any of the software. I haven't seen any of the games.
Yeah.
But let's talk about Ubisoft here for a second, because it does sound like we're going to have not only the Xbox Pass and now EA. You can get the EA. Game Pass, I forget what it's called, but the EA Play or something like that. On
EA
every
Access,
machine.
I think.
EA Access, and it sounds like Ubisoft's going to have one of their own subscription things.
And boy, wouldn't it be nice if that tucked in perfectly with Stadia? Wouldn't it be great if you were paying for the Ubisoft Pass and boom, it's working in your web browser? That's possible, man.
Yeah, for sure. Psyched about the rumors of a Watch Dogs set in London?
I'd like to see Watch Dogs be good, because I think, well, here's the thing. It's been fine, but I've been kind of beaten down by the Ubisoft open world paradigm. I think Jim Sterling has this incredible breakdown of Ubisoft's open world repetition, and I liked that Odyssey blew that up a bit. And I hope that Ubisoft has given other studios the room to wiggle around and do something really that feels different, that feels distinct, that's like, yeah, I really do want to give very valuable hours of my life to a giant game.
Yeah,
because
well,
it's gotta feel different.
It could be the rule of threes, right? If this is the third Watch Dogs, it could be the one, right? It could be the one that kind of pivots and turns it into something incredible. If it is set in London, the CCTV capital of the world, it just makes sense, Hopefully that's cool.
And the Brexit possibilities. I mean, come on.
So much fun with that, yes. And then this roller derby game, which sounds insane, but sounds like something Ubisoft would concoct, and it sounds like Rayman might be a character in something like this. Well, I want to play this game.
I mean, there's that, and there's Wild, which has been teased forever. There's Beyond Good and Evil 2. We don't know what's to come of that. I'm interested in the roller derby game because I'm a child of the 80s. I remember when they tried to make that a thing on television.
Yeah.
I don't know which studio is involved, but I do know Ubisoft loves that Technicolor 80s look. And what if they gave the Just Dance team the ability to make a gamer game and said, here, take your things that are really fun, that are those Just Dance games are beautiful, and the UI on those is a trip. Even if they're like not my bag, I would love to see that team just let loose on some crazy esports friendly, streaming friendly rollerblade party.
And there's such a big part of E3. When you say Just Dance team, I'm actually thinking of the dancers that are on stage for the whole E3 making a game. That was the first thing that went in my mind, is like all the dancers working together to make
Give them the Unreal Engine 4 license and a computer lab, man. I bet they'd rock it. I'm into that.
That's awesome, brother. All right, my friend. We're going to call it there, although we could easily keep talking for many, many more hours. Let's catch up at E3, and let's see how many of our predictions and how many of our surprises actually come true, okay?
Victor, it's always a pleasure to come on. Y'all have a lovely rest of the show and talking about Sega Genesis stuff. I think that's what's coming up next. I'm actually a little sad.
That is absolutely coming up
I'm going to
next.
actually turn it on YouTube and watch you talk about it, because I've got one of those as well. Have fun with that segment, and I'll see you like in a week.
That's awesome. That's the perfect segue. Let's take a look at my review of the Mega SG. You know, I didn't know for sure that I was going to pick up the Analogue Mega SG because I was more of a Super Nintendo guy growing up. I actually fell in love with the Super Nintendo. I already had the Sega Genesis, and I adored it because it was the closest thing to an arcade-perfect experience that we'd seen in home consoles at that time, which was 1989. But I was babysitting for a couple kids, and they had a Super Nintendo, and they had ActRaiser, and it was in stereo, and it blew my freaking mind. And then I fell in love with game after game on the Super Nintendo. So my Sega Genesis started to collect dust, and I thought, okay, I think I'm kind of done. I'm more of a Super Nintendo guy, and I think I still am. But when I looked at my Sega Genesis collection, I had a bunch of the cartridges, and then I also got really addicted to the superhero genre, the 16-bit superhero genre, and noticed that there were some fantastic Genesis titles out there. And so when Analogue announced that the Mega SG was coming, and I was already in love with the Super NT, which I've talked about before on this channel, I said, you know what, I'm doing this. And this is not an easy decision because the Mega SG, which perfectly recreates a Sega Genesis from a hardware standpoint, it's not an emulator. It actually has all the innards and the guts that will accept a cartridge perfectly. So it's not like you're loading a cartridge into memory and it's playing from it. You need to plug the cartridge in and it needs to play it one-to-one. So there's no slippage, the audio is exactly what you think, and it's all rendered through the much more up-to-date processors, and it puts everything through an HDMI signal up to 1080p. So it's as perfect a replication of your memories of what a Sega Genesis game looked like, but for the modern age. And it's not inexpensive. It's over $200 US when all is said and done, and that's a lot of dough to plunk down on a system that's playing games upwards of 25 years old. Still, this machine surprised the hell out of me because I wasn't expecting to fall back in love with Sega Genesis and Sega Genesis games. But I really did, and I really appreciated that even though the artistry is different and maybe you could argue not as refined as some of the stuff that you find on Super Nintendo, there was a unique elegance and a unique craft that was on display there, especially from the Sega published titles. Sega Genesis titles like the Spider-Man game that Sega published, where you could swing around and take care of bad guys, and you can also pause the game and select a camera and take pictures of some of the crimes that you defeat so you can earn money so you can buy new web shooters. It's just such a brilliant title. And then there were those amazing X-Men games, X-Men 1 and 2. X-Men 1 is incredibly difficult but beautiful, and X-Men 2 is just a refinement, and it's just loaded with all kinds of great features, and it starts off with a bang where you don't even know what's happening because you're in a blizzard and you got to defeat all kinds of bad guys. This is before the credits or any kind of title screen pops up. You're in the game, and it's amazing. And I started to kind of dive deeper into the Genesis catalog, games that I hadn't played before. Classics like Gargoyles, which I hadn't played since back in the day. Incredible, impeccable platformers like the classics like Aladdin and Earthworm Jim, of course. But one that I discovered again, which I couldn't believe how polished it was, is the Pitfall Mayan Adventure from Activision. Incredible game, such awesome ornate animations and lots of great details in the background, lots of cool enemies to fight. You have to take out a jaguar with some stones that you're whipping at them. You've got the ability to spring up from this gooey snake-like monster things that are hanging down. You've got to sort of navigate through waterfalls. You've got minecart sequences, tons of minecart sequences in 16-bit software. Really fun to play that. Really fun to play titles like BattleTech, where you're controlling a giant armored mech thing and you got to manage your ammunition and the heat that your machine is giving off.
Danger, overheating.
Road Rash 3 was a blast to jump back into, where I was just blown away by the imaginative problem solving of the developers to create an organic feeling, amorphous road for us to race around in. It's not just like straight angles and it's all clunky. It just felt like it was like a living organism where you're sort of traveling. Now, certainly the other racers and the cars coming towards you look a little choppy and a little like bam, 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 like they're coming in that way. But you can get smacked off your bike and you're running back for your bike, and the animations, rudimentary and crude, especially when blown up onto a giant screen. It's still amazing work, and it's great to see titles like that. I think the NHL games have aged incredibly well from Electronic Arts. Not so much the sports titles like NBA Live. I threw in NBA Live 96, and it just felt a little bit slippery, and there was a little bit of flickering. There's a lot of detail, a lot of stuff going on screen at the same time, which is cool, but certainly sports games really benefit from the advent of new technology and the horsepower to create something that's closer to photorealism. Didn't go crazy for NBA Hang Time or NBA Jam, the old classic arcades. We played better versions of those. Playing old classic fighting games like Mortal Kombat 3, which is still cool. It's great that all those characters are there, and the fact that they managed to compress all of that data, this actual videotape data of all these fighters, into a Sega Genesis cartridge is impressive as hell. But we've seen better iterations and better looking variations of software just like this as these series continue. And we're, of course, playing Mortal Kombat 11 right now with our jaws hitting the floor. I played Samurai Showdown on the Sega Genesis, and it was okay, but I noticed that there was, a little bit of slowdown, a little bit of a choppiness. It didn't match what was capable on Neo Geo's own home console or even the 3DO version of Samurai Showdown, which all came out roughly around that same period, so it's a little less impressive. There were tons of fighting games for the Genesis, but it wasn't really the fighting game system. I think I preferred the fighting games on the Super Nintendo, if we're talking 16-bit. The one thing that I will say is Sega has done a fairly good job at emulating its software and releasing it in packages, and of course we've got the mini Sega Genesis coming out later this year. So it wasn't really the Sega first-party stuff that made me want to pull the trigger and pick up the Mega SG. Although Sega First Party has published a lot of licensed stuff, primarily that's the stuff that is really fascinating to me because it acts like a time capsule. It acts like these old 16-bit cartridges that are based on beloved properties. On the Super Nintendo, you got Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and I've got Spawn and Phantom and RoboCop and stuff like that. And on the Genesis, I had the X-Men titles and Spider-Man. I've got a Wolverine, Adamantium's Rage. I've got Maximum Carnage, the Spider-Man beat 'em up, which I know is probably arguably a little bit better on the Super Nintendo because of the music and stuff, but it's still really fun to play. I've got the red cartridge that I slap into the Mega SG, and it looks incredible. And that's the thing, is the library is huge and there's lots of great titles, but they've never looked better, when you put the cartridge in. And the one thing the Mega SG does, it does a couple things. You can actually connect it to the Sega CD. I couldn't find the power supply, so I couldn't get my Sega CD to work, and quite frankly, I've got a small library of Sega CD games, but I doubt I'll ever really dive into that stuff. I bought this machine primarily for Sega Genesis cartridges, and similarly, it will play Sega Master System games. I never got into that console. I just tried a bunch of Sega Master System games at Anime North, the expo that I was just at in Toronto, and I thought they were okay, but I thought the NES outclassed the Sega Master System. Sacrilege to some of you, I know. And so I don't have a library of Master System titles. I don't know which games to get. I am curious, I'm intrigued, especially because my Mega SG will play some of those games. So if you've got a collection of 5 games for the Master System that you think I should check out, let me know in the comments below. And I will say that I'm not really a big fan of diving into super old 8-bit role-playing games, just because role-playing games take so much time and there's so many more recent role-playing experiences that I would rather devote my time to. So keep it more action-oriented. But if you've got Master System titles that you think I should check out for this machine, please let me know. What do I think of the Mega SG, and should it be something that everybody should pick up? I don't think it's something that everybody should pick up. I think it's a bit of a niche system. It's a luxury item. Over $200 US, you're going to be paying for this, which is, you have to stop and think about that. It's $200 US that you could throw in a lot of great directions in the video game industry. But these Sega Genesis cartridges, if you've got a library of 10 to 20 excellent games that you love and would love to see in the finest possible detail, finest possible quality, and hear as well, because the audio coming out of this device is fantastic as well, then you should seriously consider looking at this. If you are a collector, if you are considering diving deep into the Genesis library, that pool, then you should consider this. But if you are fine with just playing the Sega Genesis collection on your Nintendo Switch or your PC or your PlayStation or Xbox, and that's enough for you, you've got an excellent, library of Genesis titles in that collection. Or maybe you're going to get the mini Sega Genesis down the road. That's going to be a big chunk of games, right? And I wouldn't even really go after a lot of that first-party stuff if you've already got these collections or you're going to get the mini Sega Genesis. Go after the more obscure titles, the licensed titles that they have a tough time kind of rebooting or getting back out there again. One cartridge that's very elusive and I haven't been able to track down yet because it's supposed to be super expensive is the Punisher. And another one is Captain America and the Avengers, which I've heard are great. Both games are great on the Genesis. I want those. That's what's interesting me, and that's why I've been adoring and loving this experience. The Mega SG is wonderful. I think I like the Super NT a little bit more because I like the Super Nintendo library more, but I have been shocked at how much I love the Mega SG and how grateful I am that a company like Analogue exists where they just fetishize and just make hardware that is just so sleek and slick, but you're going to pay a hefty price for it. I'm going to give the Mega SG a 9 out of 10. We're coming in. One thing that I didn't talk about is that the for that over $200 US price doesn't come with a controller. You gotta get your other controller. It works with the old classic Sega Genesis controllers, or you can pick up the 8BitDo M30, which is what I did. I picked up the this is the Bluetooth one, and then I picked up the adapter that allows you to connect through a Sega Genesis port, so this would work on a classic Genesis system if I wanted to. There is a specific 2.4 gigahertz one. I sound like such a nerd when I get into it. But there's a specific one that was made just for this machine. What I can tell you about this controller, it is the best retro gaming controller I have played with. And you can use it on the Switch, which Michael, our friend from VFS, is going to do right now. And he's going to play a little Castlevania. And this is the Castlevania Bloodlines game, which came out on the Sega Genesis. And it's actually, you got to press,
it's swapped.
There you go. Yeah, it's swapped, and then you press that. There you go. And then that, and you're good. So now, start. So there you go. And that's attack with this button, jump with there. You got it. Okay, cool. So you gotta kill the fish guys.
I'll do my
Okay,
best.
all right. Kill the fish guys and keep moving. Okay, so this is Let's Play and Chat. It's 5:30 already, so we're gonna do maybe 10 minutes of doing a little Let's Play and Chat right here. So if you've got any questions for me or for Michael or for Blake or for any of our lovely audience members, go ahead and shoot them out. Any questions, any comments? Vic, play John's favorite game of all time, Double Dungeons. Okay. We want that game room tour. This is all from Cryptic Tiefish. Wants a game room tour, and he wants me to play a game that he thinks Johnny loves. So we'll see. The Sega Channel was awesome, M. Murphy is saying. I never got the Sega Channel, but I don't. Did they have that in Canada? Did anybody know? Remember that Sega Channel? It was a great idea, though. The idea, like a television channel filled with games that you could download to your machine, super cool. Nintendo Boy 17, neither the SNES and Genesis were the way to play Samurai Showdown. It's the arcade version, which you can now get on various collections for consoles. Yeah, I've said this before, but the very first game that was sent to us for review was Crystal Dynamics, was a game publisher before they were acquired, ultimately by Eidos, but they published the SNK Samurai Showdown for the 3DO, and that was the very first game that came to us, and it was unbelievable. We played the hell out of that game.
I think I'm missing something. I'm stuck.
You go down that stair. The stairs right there. Back in the day, yeah, there you go. Back in the day, they didn't have all of the fancy, the 3D showing you where everything goes. You just had to kind of, had to figure it out. Wesley West says, yes, the Sega Channel was in Canada. 32X support on the Mega SG. Did I start to write that? I don't know if I wrote that, but they don't have it yet, but they may add it later. That's one of the things about the analog stuff too, is that you'll get firmware updates and you have more functionality, and then people are finding all kinds of ways to hack the hardware so that it'll play the multi-carts and all the other stuff that's out there. Question from SamIam111. What is your take on Epic Games sponsoring the PC gaming show at E3 this year? Do you think that they will have more exclusives to announce? Yeah, I think Epic is definitely going after it. It's hard.
Yeah.
That's Castlevania for you. Welcome. Have you ever played a Castlevania game before?
A little bit of some of them, yeah.
Okay, all right. Yeah,
I'm
that's.
looking forward to Bloodstain, though.
Yeah, big time. Yeah, I don't. Did Igarashi work on this game? Anybody know?
I'm not sure about this one.
On Bloodlines? I know he did all the GBA games and all that stuff. He might have. Oh, he did Symphony of the Night as well. I don't know if he was here. He probably was. But these games they're classics.
I need to play them. Yeah.
They're really hard. This is all part of the Castlevania collection that Konami just released on all the different platforms. Super fun. Jamie's got a question. Question is, what was it like for me to interview Tommy the other day? I love it. I think it's, and this is a bit of a sidetrack, but Jeff Keighley, when I was just with him at the E3 Critics thing, he was really pushing for me to kind of get a whole reunion together with as many people that I could from the EP days together for something. And it's really, really fun. I love doing that. And I'm very impressed with the person that Tommy has become over time. You know, like he's taught me so much about how to be ambitious and run a business and dream big. You're just going everywhere, aren't you?
It won't let me.
And then you press this button. There's trigger buttons, and then
To
there you go.
Continue?
And then A and continue. It's B. Oh, actually, back in the day, you had to press the start button. There you go.
I was trying to find.
There you go. You gotta
I'll figure
think
it out, yeah.
1995, buddy. You gotta think 1995. Yeah. So to interview Tommy was just a real treat. You know, I'm happy for him that he's got married. I'm so happy for him that he's become vegan. You know, I'm happy that he found his true love in the console space as the president of Intellivision, because he talked about that system incessantly over time. I'm happy that he made Video Games Live a reality. I miss working with him, but I miss working with all of the team. You know, that's part of it. You know, it's like I've been a proud papa, and I've watched a lot of my family just go off and do all kinds of cool things. But it was cool, and maybe one day we will do a huge EP reunion. But at the same time, I also love making new things too. You know, I love that Michael is up here, who's never played a game from 1995 on the Sega Genesis before.
My parents had an NES.
Yeah, your parents had an NES. Okay. Where's Kelly Benson from Tyfish? She actually writes. Her mom was she would write horoscopes for the papers. And Kelly has taken over that. She's worked in marketing. She's worked in the games industry. She worked at EA for a long time. And she's worked with different media organizations and set up all kinds of conferences and things like that in the city. She's got a really big Rolodex and has worked in lots of cool jobs. But one of the jobs that she has is that she writes horoscopes, and they get published, and I guess she can read the stars. I don't know what that job title is, but she's an astrologist. Yeah. Which is so cool. And she inherited that from her mom. What was rad about hiring Kelly, I gotta have her on, don't I? People asking. Kelly Benson was in our first 2 seasons. She was in a commercial, and I just for like TELUS or something like that, and I would see it, and I was like, that girl. She was beautiful, but that girl, there's something really special about that girl in that show. And when I brought her into audition, one of the things that made me want to have her be on the show is that she was, when she was pregnant, she had a kid around that time. And when she was pregnant, what she did is she went around the city with her handy cam, and she interviewed people about what they thought the world was going to be like, you know, for her kid, for her baby. And I just thought it was incredible that she had so much, sort of self-motivation and wherewithal to get out there and collect this video content for her child. And I thought that was really cool. And that's the way I've always kind of made decisions on people that we've brought into the company. It hasn't just been like they're good looking or they can say things. Clearly, it's been that they endeavor to bring something really cool into the world. And Kelly, certainly, to everybody that's been on EP and Reviews on the Run, clearly have. Like, I don't know if you guys remember Donna Gowland. No, Donna Gowland. Nope, sorry. Threw out somebody. Is that right? What was Donna? Oh, Donna Mailing Park. I threw out a name I shouldn't have. Now everybody's going to be Googling that. That's a personal Donna that I know. Donna Mailing Park, who used to be on our show, she works for the United Nations now. And she lives in Paris, and she's traveled all over the world with various youth programs and things like that. It's amazing. Nazanin, who used to be on the show, has look Google Nazanin, and you will be blown away by the cool things. She's had a life in politics and has done some incredible things as well. Julie Stouffer just published her first game last year. Jeff Keighley's been up to a couple things. Yeah, I'm very proud of all of them. Question: will PS5 specs being so powerful? PS5 specs being so powerful, do you think there's an opening for PC games to hit console, thus leaving you with endless work and reviews? PC games to hit it already is like that. It feels like, especially with the Switch kind of opening up the floodgates to allow lots and lots of indie games to be on this platform. I think even more so, it feels like there's more of them on the Switch than on the PS4 and Xbox. It already feels like Steam has infiltrated the console business, It's exasperating, and I've always relished the idea that I've had lots of team members that I could kick review content to, and we could get you reviews on everything, but it feels like I need that team more than ever now, just when media just can't afford to hire like that these days, but there's so much content out there. I can't hire all those guys right now, but I would love to do that because there's so many different titles to be able to review out there. It's just crazy. Comment: awesome Godzilla review. You and John have excellent chemistry. How did you two meet? Oh, that's a great question. That's from Bear, actually, Baruti, who we had Bear come in as an intern, basically working with the BCIT, the school here. They have like a broadcasting department, and we've worked with them over the years where they've given us some students to kind of, learn some of our ropes. And we had transitioned to streaming and to the internet, to YouTube. So we weren't the scale and size that we had been when we worked with BCIT before. So I was a little hesitant. But then I thought, you know what, this is kind of what's happening with media. Everybody's transitioning, everybody's getting used to making more with less, and this would be eye-opening and a good thing for Bear or I didn't know it was going to be Bear, but for the student to come in and take part. And Bear came in and he was fantastic and a great collaborator and could do a little bit of everything. But he also knew Johnny, because Bear had been doing some YouTube stuff out of New Westminster, where Johnny lives, and he said, I got to get you two together. You guys, I think, would hit it off. And I think we went to a movie for the first time or something like that, and we did hit it off. And he was a guy that I didn't know his career. I still don't really know tons and tons of YouTubers out there, but I was really impressed with his passion and his growth and his persistence and his ability to create his own business based around all of this stuff. And I went, yeah, man, this is going to be fun. Let's start working together. And I went on his show and he came on our show, and it's really fun working with him. He's an awesome guy. VR Grid.
Hard.
What's that?
This game's so hard.
Yeah, it's very hard.
They just throw so much stuff at
This is
you.
what's happened, right? Like, I used to play and chat at the same time as a pod. People were just so infuriated with me because I would be hitting the walls all the time. Don't worry. Nobody's judging. You're doing way better than I would be.
That's probably not true.
Yeah. I love watching the youth struggle in games from my childhood. This is from VR Grid. That's awesome. Rowan Strada. I think we got time for two more questions, guys. Vic, what is Scott C. Jones doing when is he going to be on the show? Rowan Strada, I just met with Scott when I was in Toronto, and I thought about shooting something with him. He has an awesome podcast called Heavily Pixelated, and he's been writing articles, and he's in the process of writing a book, and he's been doing some consulting work with the video game industry. So he has got his fingers in lots of different pies and doing all kinds of stuff. And I thought about shooting with him when I was there, but we hadn't seen each other for a while, and I just wanted to have a good visit, and that's what we had, and it was great to see him. And he's doing well, and he'll be happy to hear that you're thinking about him. Jamie's got the last question. Yep. He asking if all of the open sort of ended streaming and cloud services and stuff that are out there maybe means that we're going to transition to one game system. I don't think it's going to be a system. I think it's going to be a screen. I think that it's going to be, you're going to have a physical controller, but the screen is where you're going to watch your stuff. And I think before we get to that, we might see branded consoles that operate in the way that television sets do. You can't really get a bad TV.
It's like a smart TV
in 29.
console
Yeah.
or something like that.
but I feel like we might get a PlayStation system or a Nintendo system in the way that we might get an LG TV or a Samsung TV. They'll have access to all the content, or a PC. PCs are like that now too, right? You can't really, unless you buy, really terrible components, you're not really going to get a bad PC. And it will, depending on the scale of your graphics card, it will pretty much handle everything. So there's some, parity across a lot of that technology, and I think that's true in a lot of consumer tech, except for video game platforms. And I think that's what will hit next after PlayStation 5 and the next Xbox. I think there will be this sort of homogeny that's going to happen with machines, and then after that, it'll just be screens, and that's what Stadia is banking on, And Xbox is looking too, and I think they're all looking towards that. And I do think that, when you look at a movie like Ready Player One, which Ernie Klein kind of conceptualized and put together as a written book, sort of, with some of his best ideas, but then it was really, mined by the futurists that Steven Spielberg would have the money to hire. They're really thinking down the road of a future where all of that content is just streamed to us down a merged pipe, where all of this IP. The internet kind of is what Ready Player One suggests anyways, except we're not living in that world, When you look at a video on YouTube and it just has every character in it,
Smash Bros is almost like that.
Smash Brothers is almost like that, Like we're just merging worlds and IPs like crazy based on, just this sheer amount of content that's already coming our way. So I think that game systems will mirror that down the road. The idea of isolated exclusivity feels more and more antiquated as time goes on, doesn't it?
I wonder if Nintendo will always just make their own systems, though. They seem pretty set on just doing their own weird thing.
I think they will for a while, but I think also that you'll be able to play competitive software on, and that's what, Microsoft is publishing games on Nintendo right now.
Yeah.
That's happening. So I think that will just grow and grow. And then eventually it'll just be, controllers, and maybe we'll be able to 3D print our own controllers. and
I'm sure you already can.
Right? Yeah. Good questions, and great chat today. Thank you to our guest, Sam Machkovech. From Ars Technica. It was fantastic having you on. Thank you, Michael.
Yeah, thank you.
For playing a little Castlevania
Trying
Collection.
to play.
And we're going to have a great weekend, right, everybody? Yes? Yes, great weekend. Make sure you have lots of fun. Make sure you get out in the sunshine, but also make sure that you play forever. We'll see you on Monday. Our guest is going to be Steve Reckschaffner.